Inertia, a propensity toward naught, to persist unaffected in extant loyalty to a rectilinear state, a property of matter which compels its existing state of uniform motion in a straight line, unless that state is changed by an external force. Lace up your boots and say howdy to the external force. Didn't exactly sneak inside the wire, did it? Nope. This has been coming for about 150 years. This robust republic managed to survive Reconstruction, the Industrial Revolution, a depression sandwiched between two world wars, all orchestrated by progressive evil, the confusion of Korea, a modern presidential assassination, 1968 as a whole, the shadows and deception of the Cold War in Vietnam, Jimmy effing Carter, and the collapse and reconstitution of the Sovietsky. None of that, collectively or combined, successfully tore us apart. There were some iffy times, to be sure, but generally, decent people resist the unnatural and gravitate to the self-evident. To wit, even the late, beleaguered Rodney King articulated the boilerplate of human disposition when he said, "Can we all just get along?" Before I get into things, this episode is going to be a bit different than past forays into exploring the human condition. The paradigm has shifted, and so must we. I'm going to offer my thoughts, some solutions, and invite you to examine your attitude about the current tide of culture and determine where you are and where you wish to go. It's your choice. It's your choice. I'm no witless junior Marxist revolutionary attacking old ladies in the street and desecrating Abraham Lincoln statues. I'm not going to harm you if you don't submit to my will. I don't garner my philosophy from hashtags and substance-free virtue signaling on the church of social media. I'm simply a dude with some thoughts about life and where I will work to be when mine is over. Because of that, I naturally advocate your free will, and I expect nothing less from my circle. Now, I'd like to ask you to be part of my circle if you believe in the message and are willing to execute on it. Become a patron and donate to this cause, our cause, by following the show link to patron.podbean.com/here's a thing, or by clicking the little $ or the Become a Patron button on the Here's a Thing episode page of your Podbean app. I'm asking you to come in, consider it deeply, and be a part of the circle if you are willing to get on this path. As little as $1 or whatever you can give. Now, if you don't want to or can't or otherwise are reluctant to help out monetarily, that's fine. You can help out just as much by sharing not only this episode, but sharing the entire podcast. Share the message. It's important that it gets out there. I'm not making any money on this, and that's not my intent anyway, but we need to keep it alive. So if you can give, please do. And if not, share the show. Share the message. Share the thoughts. So, what happened? What's so different now than 1968, for example? 1968 saw the Tet Offensive in Vietnam, the extreme violence of the Democratic Convention, imagine that, in Chicago, the LBJ Nixon crossover, and the assassinations of MLK and RFK. Think about that for a second when you're trying to put 2020 into perspective. One of the greatest human rights figures in history, and a senator / attorney general / presidential brother / presidential candidate were assassinated in the United States of America 2 months apart. By the way, all of that was just an abridged list of 1968 goings on. Go look it up if you can handle it. Back to the question. What's the difference between now and then? The answer is the breakdown of generational responsibility, mass distraction, and the surrender of societal pillars, notably arts and entertainment, media, local governance, education, the church, and even the military. In 1968, the firewall of reason still stood. And while there was plenty of friction and crisis, the youth had not yet been inculcated in a petri dish of directed cultural sabotage. Not so much anymore. The youth of 1968 are the puppet masters of 2020, and they have been engineering this insurrection for decades. From the fashionably exclusive enclaves of New York, Chicago, and LA, they took control of every cultural pillar and milepost and infused them with cancer. They didn't just take hope away from their grandchildren. They erased the very concept of hope from existence. If you're under 40 years of age in 2020, you're not choosing immorality and intellectual dishonesty. It's that no alternative exists in your world. You've been raised on orchestrated misinformation, and we allowed it to happen in the open, right in front of our noses. While we were playing Angry Birds, perfecting the selfie, and image crafting the ideal life on Facebook, we willfully ignored the devil kicking out the legs of the stool upon which we sat. Allow me to illustrate. Imagine you were born between 1990 and 2000, give or take a couple of years on either side. Your entire consciousness has been endless friction. War, disease, poverty, famine, corruption, systemic hierarchical dominance, income instability, and everything being just plain icky and mean. Now remember, this is the backdrop of your formative years, not your weary, indifferent old person years. You're soaking this in like a sponge, every photon of information. Now, some of the more alert of you might be saying, wait a second. Name a time when we didn't see constant war, disease, poverty, famine, corruption, systemic hierarchical dominance, and income instability. Those are the realities of a dispassionate world run by fallible humans. Very astute observation indeed. And this is where I bring back inertia, generational responsibility, and couple them with normalcy bias, availability cascade, and the continued influence effect. This is the part where you say, bro, what the hell are you talking about? Fair enough. I'll put it thusly. We dropped the ball. We dropped the ball. We didn't live up to our end of the bargain as adults. We found it too pesky to bother the generations that followed us with annoying crap like stand up straight, speak clearly, move with a purpose, treat others with kindness, understand what's important and value those things, learn stuff, teach others, be self-aware, and don't be an asshole. How can we possibly expect someone to construct something so complex as a life without instruction or tools? The foundational elements of humanity are not minutia, but we treated them as annoying speed bumps on the road to nowhere. Generational responsibility. It is the obligation of taking all of the things that your progenitors taught you, layering on all the new knowledge you've managed to amass, dispassionately discarding the dumb shit that need not exist any longer, and delivering that parcel of enlightenment to the next generation who will repeat the cycle. That's how a reasonably functioning society elevates itself through the meandering course of eternity. This is where the devil kicked the legs out, and the inertia of relative ease and our propensity toward bias of normalcy became the sand in which we jam our heads. Instead of raising hell at impudent children, moronic academics, intrinsic corruption, and creeping cultural insurgency, we pass the buck to institutions that we just wouldn't see had been taken over and rewired. We ignored the red flags, and we bought a new phone. We shifted responsibility, and we consumed our way to endless debt. We abdicated our sacred burden of honor, and we frittered away the shape of our children's grasp of reality. Someone else will take care of it, right? Well, someone else certainly did. And once you forfeit, you cannot replay the match. The insanity that you see around you is not a temporary spasm. It's the direct result of a generation plus being carefully misled, misinformed, and manipulated into a seething ball of anger. It's pretty elementary math. If you grew up in the last 20 to 30 years of sanctioned lies, filth, spiritually, intellectually, and emotionally abandoned by your elders, and indoctrinated by the lunacy of social media, well, hell's bells. You'd want to burn the whole thing down too. Can you blame them? Absolutely not. We are to blame. So now what? You can't undo what's been done. Or can you? You can and you should, but the unpleasant reality is that the results won't be visible in our lifetime, and you have to be willing to break the pull of inertia. You have to be willing to give up the conventional ornaments of the cultural chimera. Look around and think. Do you like watching sports? Many people do. Sports is as woven into the human cloth as laughter and hydration. You have to be okay with the concept of fan-based sporting contests disappearing, or at least taking on a wholly unrecognizable shape. It's coming, and you can feel it if you're paying attention. Let it go. Don't embrace a poor version of something eroded and withered because of nostalgia. The inferior version of something is never better than nothing at all. Find or create something else to do. What about restaurants, movies, parks, the gym, the office, or church? Remember freedom of assembly? That was adorable. Do you realize it's been nearly half a year that your movement has been dictated by legally problematic means? Name the last time a bureaucracy took something temporarily. It's not coming back, and you need to be okay with that. Because you can adapt and adjust. You can create your own ecosystem and grow it to maturity based on those values most of humanity hold to be self-evident: decency, honesty, and fortitude. But you can't be afraid of walking away from old conventions. If you're afraid, if you show those desperate to control you that you fear the loss of inertia, then hope is dead, slain by the dagger of passivity. What about the people who intersect with your life? I've always said, surround yourself with people who elevate you. It is time to look around in earnest, figure out who those people are, and draw them close. But you're also going to have to execute the discipline required to walk away from those who are choosing a destructive path. And as I keep saying, you have to be okay with that. This is not to say that you abandon your humanity. Certainly not. There is a line between conducting oneself with grace and absorbing the asinine self-immolation of those who refuse to acknowledge a better path. Be polite and walk away. If they come back to you, if they seek your counsel with genuine authenticity, you be ready to help. You can't save the world. That's the ridiculous daydream of children. But you can do something real. You can create an ecosystem of decency. You can craft an environment where you work hard, eat dinner with your family without electronics, and read more than you watch TV. You can carve out a place where you value the condition of your mind, your body, and your spirit. You can foster a habitat where self-worth matters more than self-esteem, where validation isn't found in cartoon thumbs and hearts, and where for goddamn sure little girls creating and distributing their own homemade porn isn't seen as just the way things are now. It won't be easy though. Not now and not ever. You will have to fight for it, grind over it, and sacrifice your time to it until you die. It's right in front of you. That's the price for willful disregard of duty. Because, you see, we didn't get to this upside-down, dissolute state of intellectual debauchery because we lost the fight. We're here because we never even raised our voice. So be it. We have to be okay with that and move on. What's the alternative? Curl up in a ball and spend your remaining days aching for what's gone? You can't build a house with ashes. John Adams said, "I must study politics and war that our sons may have liberty to study mathematics and philosophy." Now, I don't expect you all to run out and read Sun Tzu, Plato's Republic, or Locke, although that wouldn't be a waste of your time, but the sentiment of those words runs deeper than, here's the thing, go do it. It says that the time has come for me to sacrifice my idle luxuries so that the possibility of a decent future doesn't die with me. You don't need to lead a mob on Capitol Hill. You don't need to organize a resistance group. You don't need to plan a counterinsurgency in your basement. You don't need to expose yourself or your family to the wildfire of incoherent lunacy that's engulfing those without a sense of value and humanity. The world doesn't need you to be Jesus or Joan of Arc or Nathan Hale or Gandhi or King. In fact, the world doesn't need you. That's the egocentric philosophy of a kindergartner. So, what is it? What is it that you must do to avoid being consumed by this conflagration? You have faith in your humanity, and you stand on the concrete foundation of values you constructed while the diseased and rotten pieces of the culture fall away. You stay out of the stream of humanity running for the cliffs of the abyss crying, "I'm not a bad person. I'll do anything to prove that to the world." You stand your ground and calmly say, "I am. I have nothing to prove to anyone except myself." But don't confuse simple with easy. You will have to allow many things and many people that have always been part of your life to fall away and find the path on their own, or not. And you have to be okay with that. This isn't to say that you quit life. Quite the opposite. By shrinking your circle of trust and focusing your energy on only those people and activities that are really important, that genuinely matter, you will enhance and concentrate your quality of life. We've been spread far too thin for far too long, and it's worn us out and made us numb. Two of the first episodes I recorded here were about authenticity and isolation. Embrace the former and defeat the latter. Be authentic and seek others who are on the same path. By cutting loose the kind of people who dilute your quality of life and then seeking to draw near those who enhance it, you concentrate the power of decency and light. The momentum of darkness has pushed us apart, isolated us from one another, and splintered the light of humanity so thoroughly that it seems to have been extinguished, just as planned. This isn't a random series of cascading events. Understand, this is about control. If you are isolated, you have self-doubt. If you have self-doubt, you begin to despair. If you despair, you lose hope. When you are hopeless, you are easily controlled. It's time to steel your spine and regather the scattered embers of light. Reconcentrate authenticity and human decency, and you will find hope again. This can't be done alone. You need someone to walk the path with you. Now, the military community has a general philosophy in the face of difficult times and chaotic moments. There are many variations, but the message is something like this. When things seem out of control and everyone around you is losing their minds, scan your area, look for the quiet one, and snap link to that dude. Because he's about to cut fence and sort some shit out. Find someone. Using the aforementioned words of John Adams as a template, you can create an effective outline for the next phase of your life. You don't have to study war and politics. Instead, you need to study yourself to determine how you can do your part to create an environment of self-awareness and self-determination for following generations. Because right now they have neither. You need to strengthen three things. Remember this triangle: your mind, your body, and your spirit. And you need to treat each of these as an integral part of the whole. You can't ignore one side of the triangle without the structure collapsing. None is more or less important than the others. They work together to form the realization of you, the complete you, the highly functioning you, the you that is an example to others seeking to elevate themselves. Take care of your body. It's the only one you will ever be issued. It's a machine requiring proper maintenance and proper fuel. Now listen, caring for your physical body isn't about the narcissistic fitness fanatics who flex in mirrors or the snowflake princesses who concocted the concept of fat shaming in order to feel okay about their laziness and gravy intake. To hell with them. You take care of your body for a handful of very elemental and relatable concepts: well-being, longevity, and readiness. Well-being. Okay. It doesn't require deep thought to arrive at the conclusion that if you feel better, you perform better, your outlook on life is better, and you attract the kind of people into your circle who will be a positive influence and further generate fuel for the cycle of positivity. You will become a self-engendering machine of perpetual effectiveness. How does that sound? Longevity. You take care of your body for longevity. My father died at 69. When I was 48, my daughter was 13, and my nieces were very small. There are now two more beautiful grandchildren whom he never met and who will never benefit from his kindness, humor, wisdom, and love. We don't have a medical history in my family that kills us early. My father died at a relatively young age because he didn't take care of his body. Period. He ignored this element of the triangle and it killed him. He died in hospice, in pain, and completely unaware of his family around him. God, I wish my dad was still around. And I wish we didn't have to reckon with the anger and sadness that accompanied the knowledge that he did it to himself. Listen to me. There are people who love you and value your presence in their lives. It shouldn't be too much to ask to make a few sacrifices of the flesh in order to be whole and present for your family and friends. Readiness. If you should encounter a threat to yourself or your family and you aren't ready, shame on you. You can't effectively respond to a crisis if you are weak, soft, sluggish, obese, obtuse, debilitated, impotent, incapable, or unprepared. You will be defeated and your family left vulnerable. Take a look around. Do you see a peaceful world? The resident universal ambient threat factor is now accompanied by packs of dehumanized individuals who will attack a young mother and her little child simply to make a video for social media validation. And they only prey on soft targets. Make an effort to not be a soft target. And guess what, ladies? Physical readiness isn't just for dudes. I'm talking to you too. Mommies, wives, aunties, girlfriends. Get after it. You have to take care of your mind. Read, write, think, connect. Put aside the nonsense that I call mental sawdust and exercise your mind. Read. Read anything. Fiction. Fiction allows your mind to create the visual scenes of the story. Biographies give you insight into the lives of others. History. Well, that helps you connect all the dots of human existence to the point that you can reach out and touch the ancients. Reading is fuel for the mind. Write. This is an easy one to neglect, but it is so very critical to the formulation of complete and mature philosophy, ideas, and principles. The simple act of writing out a thought or idea gives it a physical life from which it may grow and flourish. Writing also aids the process of turning short-term memory into implicit memory. If you have a thought that you'd like to develop and you don't write about it, you have failed yourself and your cognitive development. Write down your thoughts. It doesn't matter where, when, or by what method. Writing is the lubricant of a healthy mind. Think. Ruminate about stuff. Engage in thought that is unpolluted by external distraction. Allow your mind to wander. Put down the damn phone. Step away from the computer. Turn off the television, the radio, or whatever distractions you place in your cognitive space. Disengage and allow your mind to work how it was intended. Perhaps the greatest catastrophe of 21st century life is the destruction of the developing mind by removing free-form thought and free time and replacing them with mindless filler designed to distract. The moment you stuck a phone in your child's hand was the moment you began to flatten their existence into a world of phony validation and distraction. Why think, observe, and listen to your environment when you can bow your head to the little glowing god of distraction? How can you think if you're constantly distracted? How can you create if you can't think? Connect. Now, this is the element that has been the source of much debate in my house. I've always said read, write, think, speak as a mantra to prod myself into self-examination and thought development. You've heard it here plenty of times. Anytime I verbalize it around the house, my wife adds, listen. You have to listen. And because I was listening, I certainly don't balk at the concept. I think my problem just generally was adding a fifth word when four rolled off the tongue so fluidly. But she was right. I needed to recognize the art of listening without disfiguring my little quadrilateral. So I engaged my brain pan content to combine the elements into a complementary concept. That's where we arrive at connect. You see, much like writing, physically speaking an idea gives it life and substance. It also allows it to be consumed through the ear holes of one or more additional brains to in turn be further shaped and refined. Connect with your friends and family in order to speak and listen. Work those long atrophied muscles. There is no better way to bring fully formed thoughts into this world. Consider the current process. Any thought that pops into anyone's head skips all the building blocks, all those steps, and gets blurted into cyberspace, only to then be malevolently shredded by millions of anonymous hobgoblins of hate. Another delightful byproduct of the smartphone and social media, the death of thought and reason. Happily, there was an unforeseen additional benefit of the connect element. This culture is largely broken, in great part because people have lost or rejected a real connection to the world around them and replaced it with, yep, there it is again, whatever inauthentic assery taking place at that moment on the screen of the handheld idiot maker. And with that, you get three emotional outcomes: mindless, ignorant thumbing, anger, or one of its delightful cousins, or virtue signaling for validation. By and large, authenticity doesn't exist on social media. It's a wasteland of meaningless bullshit and counterfeit judgment disguised very thinly as reality. It is a disconnect from the world, and it is toxic for the human spirit. Which brings us to our third part of the triangle. The importance of the health of the human spirit cannot be overstated. Take care of your spirit. Now, this is where people start arguing and fighting and hollering. You need to CTFO, chill out, and stand down for a minute. I specifically chose the word spirit for all it encompasses. Character, temperament, resolve, essence, humor, morale, morality. Some call that a soul. Choose whatever word you like, but feed it, nurture it, and expand it. Pinpoint the driving force in your life that inspires you to be better than you were yesterday and nourish it with light. Be so very grateful and joyful in life that it becomes a self-sustaining force. Being strong of spirit is not a competition. It isn't a zero-sum game where your strength necessarily comes at the expense of another. Being strong of spirit is a gift you unwrap each time you open your eyes to start your day. Don't ignore the powerful potential of a healthy spirit. Your body and mind are mere functionaries without it. Now, I don't own these thoughts, and I'm certainly not the first or even the millionth person to express them. There is nothing new under the sun. There are plenty of people out there sharing the same message. And over the coming weeks and months, I'm going to share a few of them with you that have inspired me along the way. It may seem counterintuitive to send you to another podcast or website or author, but I think that's wrong. I think that thought process is a byproduct of the age of content validation. If we don't share information with those around us, we are committing, well, pretty much all of the 7 deadly sins. I've been inspired over the past few months and years by many people, a few of which I'd like to encourage you to look up and engage. We'll start getting into that next time. I once said here that there are a million little graces each of us can supply to the demand of decency. It doesn't take much to make your slice of life a little more positive. When you start small, within your own walls, it spreads to the neighborhood and beyond more quickly than you can imagine. If you want to maintain your principles, you can't be passive. You can't sit around and whine about the changing culture and expect someone else to take care of things. Your active participation is required, and you need not do anything more complicated than work on yourself. The path is there. The choice, well, that's yours alone. Well, that's enough to ponder for now. Good Lord, that's enough to ponder for now. Well, that's it. Simple, right? As I said, we will get deeper into these concepts in the weeks and months to come. I hope you will continue to join me, and just as importantly, share this message and share this podcast. Snap link in and let's go. Here's a Thing can be found on the Podbean app. Here's a Thing at podbean.com, iTunes, Apple Podcast, or however they're doing it now, Google Podcast, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and lots of other places in the podcast universe. You can also ask the robot servant thing sitting in your corner to play Here's the Thing. Please subscribe, rate, and review. Your active support is critical, so click that button. It only takes a moment to make a difference. And as I said, please remember, become a patron and donate to the cause, your cause, our cause, the cause of decency and light by following the show link to patron.podbean.com/Here's a Thing, or clicking that little $ thingy or the Become a Patron button on the Here's a Thing episode page of your Podbean app. Many thanks to all of our patrons who are with us and have been with us. Whatever you're about to do, get after it 100% or don't bother going through the motions. You owe that to yourself because integrity matters. Be mindful, be fit, be authentic. It'll pay off.